Okay, welcome to part two of this mini-series of the year of 2024 in records. Once again, I'm joined by my three guests, Kev, Billy and Ben. Again, the roundtable discussion, dissecting the year. So this episode, we talk about our favourite reissues of the year. Again, we'll run down from 5 to 1, go around the table, talk about each one. So Ben, we'll start with you. So reissues of the year. Again, it's been a great year for music, as we talked about in the first episode. What about your reissue at number 5?
Yeah, so number 5 for me is Queen Latifah, Nature of a Sister. So I think this was her second album. So I think another kind of hole I've been going down in the last couple of years is Tommy Boy. And I think this was released on Tommy Boy label. It's just good early 90s hip hop. And I think the thing with Queen Latifah, if I'm honest, like I've grown up knowing her from films like Taxi and more of a bit of an actress, you know what I mean? Like not very good films, by the way, but yeah, so it's just good to delve into a back catalogue and things. And I think it's just, yeah, she's great, and I really like her style and her flow and stuff, and like a bit of like the boom bap era of hip hop, and the Tommy Boy label's always good. And I think it's just, yeah, I think this was a Record Store Day release, wasn't it, Kev? Off memory,
it
I
was,
think.
yeah.
It was. So yeah, it's just one of those where I'll be honest with you, I took a bit of a punt on it on Record Store Day, but yeah, it's just one of the top ones from this year. I think from a reissue perspective, I probably wouldn't have picked it up otherwise, and I'm really glad I did, and I want to kind of delve a little bit further into her musical career, seeing as I know her Paul films, but yeah, really solid album all round. Really, I don't think it got great feedback at the time, but I personally think it's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know how many she's done in total, but both albums and first two are brilliant, I think. Yeah. I mean, she was quite a pioneer, really, her and, a few other female MCs around that time, because it was a really male-dominated genre of music, and, not easy to get your voice heard and be taken seriously as a woman. And, yeah, she really sort of burst out and did that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, not a record that I've heard the record, but I've never really listened to it. So again, another one I'll have to check out based on your recommendation. So okay, Kev, let's go to you.
Yeah, completely different type of record, but not too dissimilar period. Curve, Cuckoo, so a duo. Obviously, most people love Doppelganger by Curve. My friends call me Disagreeable Kev for a reason. My favourite record, I love Doppelganger, but my favourite record is Cuckoo by Curve. It's one I had on CD, so I've been waiting for a reasonably priced, decent reissue to come out. And yeah, it landed this year. It's a bit of a darker album than the debut. It's got a little bit more of an electronic feel to it in places. The shoegaze is turned up a notch. It got a fairly lukewarm reaction at the time in the press. Didn't sell as many copies as the debut. But it's one records that you just love and connect with, and you don't really care what anybody else thinks about it. Yeah, I think it's a really strong, underrated record, to be honest. It's got some weird moments on it that might throw people out a little bit, and I can understand why people don't necessarily love it as much as the first album, but I think it's one if you stick with it's a really strong album. So yeah, nice to see that get reissued.
Cool. What label's that on?
They were on, I think it was Anxious at the time, but presume it's something like a music on vinyl.
Yeah, reissue.
Reissue. A couple of thousand copies, I think they did on from memory. But
cool. All right, cool. Sounds a good one. Billy?
So number 5 for me is the Charlatans 30th anniversary edition of Up to Our Hips.
Yeah.
Which is their third album that they released. I can't remember when it was 30 years ago. It's probably, if I'm being honest, my least favourite Charlatans album of the Rob Collins era. And that's not a fault of this album. I think it's the strength of the others. I bought it really for the B-sides. I think the Charlatans B-sides are as good as any bands from the 90s. I actually think I prefer them to Oasis's B-sides. Bit more diverse in their sound, personally. Again, I think they're a band, although Tim's become this thing on his own at the minute, this kind of, novelist and podcaster and his listening parties. They were the band of my childhood, the Charlatans. I think I've probably seen them going on, it must be 50, 60 times. I used to tour. I used to follow them on tours and go to 5 or 6 gigs, as in my late teens, early 20s. Most of my musical friends back on the MySpace days came from Charlatans, and some of which I'm still friends with now. Never met them, just through different forms of social media and I love for the Charlatans. They're just, again, they're a great band. It's a great reissue. I'm really happy they changed the cover, because the original sleeve to that was horrible. It was that guy and the girl.
Yeah.
Supposed to be a parody of some artwork, but the guy wouldn't take his top off or something. So he had a bit of a strop. And in America, they just got quite big. And I think the American people thought the guy and the girl on the cover were the Charlatans. So I think it caused a bit of confusion in the States. And no, I'm glad they've changed it, mixed it up. The cover's a lot better. It is a great album, even though it is my least favourite of the Rob Collins era. But that's my number 5.
So it's worth buying for the B-sides then, because I've got an original UK pressing of that album, but it's worth buying for the.
Yeah, it's got Subterrene on it, Withdrawal, You and Everybody. There's a couple of Steve Lomack and Joe Wiley recording shows. But yeah, it's if you've got any of the 7 or 12 inches, there's a couple more extra than that. So yeah, it's definitely worth getting if you're a fan. If you're not a massive fan, you probably don't need to get it. But it's one for the hardcore fans, I think.
Cool. All right. So my number 5 is Block Party, A Weekend in the City. So the first album, Silent Alarm, I absolutely adored. It was of the indie era when I was just going to university, and it was a brilliant record. And then I remember thinking, I hope the next record's just as good. And it was just as good. A Weekend in the City is such an amazing record. But again, it was of that era when early 2000s indie vinyl was just, unless you were buying it then, you were never going to get it. And yeah, it got a reissue this year along with Four and Intimacy, and Silent Alarm got reissued last year, but then it's got reissued again this year for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, I was so happy that came out. It's on green vinyl. And it sounds ace. I listened to that again today. Again, it was, like I say, a brilliant indie record from back in the early 2000s, or mid 2000s, should we say? It's 2005 or something like that. So, yeah, really good band. And they're touring that album. No, they're touring Silent Alarm, aren't they, at the moment? And doing some shows of Silent Alarm and then some other hits. So, yeah, really good record. So I'm happy that came out. Okay, so number 4, let's go to Ben.
Yeah, so I think a similar theme with a lot of these on here, bar 1 or 2, is I always find reissues a chance to catch stuff I've maybe missed before, if you know what I mean. So they're always welcome. I think one of those for me is Smashing Pumpkins and Smashing Apples, which is pretty much a greatest hits, isn't it, of Smashing Pumpkins. But they're a band who've completely bypassed me, if I'm honest with you. And I think just picking this up again, it might well have been some form of store day release earlier this year. I'm not sure, but I think it's a good kind of way to get into a band. I think it's picking up a greatest hits, and I think a lot of the Smashing Pumpkins stuff like Gish, etc. It's really expensive. I think a lot of them have been reissued recently as well. But for me, it's just a good way of. I know a lot of the big songs like Tonight and stuff, but it's just I just found them an interesting band to get into, and that album for me this year was kind of perfect timing in terms of going back into a lot of 90s stuff, what I maybe missed out of. Just kind of discovering it really. And it's just proper good, solid album. And grateful for reissue at accessible price.
Cool. Yeah, Smashing Pumpkins are a band that had passed me by massively. But then when I was over in the States recently, the albums were everywhere, and the reissues were probably a bit more affordable than they are over in the UK, of Gish and Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. So just didn't have room to buy them as well as the other stuff I bought. So otherwise I might have brought them back. But yeah, never really spent much time with them, but I'll have to try and get into them a little bit. And yeah, as you said, a greatest hits is a good way of getting into an album, a band. Sorry. So, all right, Kevin, back to you.
Yeah, Billy Martin for me. The relatively young singer-songwriter, not to be confused with the dance singer from the 90s. Yeah, Writing of Blues and Yellows. So she reissued her first 2 albums this year. This is her debut album. She's had 4 albums out now. This and the second one were going for fairly steep sort of prices to pick up on vinyl. I'd got it on CD for some reason when it came out. She was only about 16 or 17 when she sort of wrote and recorded this. It doesn't sound like a 16-year-old sort of, in the writing or in the singing. A bit like Laura Marlin, great singer, really good voice. She's very engaging live. It's a really good album. It's folk pop sort of. I'd say it's probably her most accessible album out of the 4. It's a bit more immediate than maybe some of the others that you need to give repeated listens to her. She's got more and more folky, basically, in her sound. I think she's an amazing talent. And she's from Yorkshire as well, so always nice to see a local girl doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I do remember Billy Martin coming out a little bit, and I think I do remember listening to her first album on. Will it have been on streaming around that point? It can't have been, surely.
Yeah.
Oh, will it?
I think it's probably 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, maybe then, yeah. And I think I do remember listening to a couple of tracks but then never following up on what, and I can't remember why I never followed up. Something else will have caught my ear or whatever, but of course
on the last album tour, she did Vinyl Whistle again, an in-store gig, and in true old man buys vinyl style, when I was getting my record signed by her, I did sort of say to her, when are the first 2 albums getting reissued? And she was talking basically about the sort of issues she had with her old label and how she was having to fight battles to get it reissued, but that they would definitely get reissued. She was pretty determined about that. So yeah, she did stick to her word on that, and she got them out this year.
Cool. And are they still readily available then?
Not looked, to be honest. I haven't looked back, but I think they'll probably between 1,000 1,500 press for each. So I'd imagine you'll pick them up reasonably easy, I would think.
Cool. All right, cool. Billy, on to your number 4.
So number 4, I bought this for one song, if I'm being honest, but it's an absolute belter. So I've gone for the Super Furry Animals, Fuzzy Logic, B-sides and B-sides, which was a Record Store Day reissue. The song was The Man Don't Give Up About Anybody Else, which is just an absolutely fantastic song. But they're not a band that I've spent too much time listening to. They seem to be a band that's constantly... I think I saw them to Noel Gallagher. They supported Noel Gallagher, and I think they've been at Glastonbury a few times. And Kendall called him when I was there. I've seen them live loads, sort of by mistake, if you know what I mean. But I'm warming to them a lot more. I've recently bought the first 2 albums as well. I think I bought them this year at the Record Plant. And they are a good fun band that I think I need to spend a bit more time listening to. Yeah. But this B-sides album is again testament to just how good the songwriting was for bands in the 90s, that so many great songs were just kind of shoehorned off onto singles or, left on the floor. But no, it's a really fun... I actually can't remember what else is on there, actually. It's probably some live stuff. But no, it's a good fun, good collection of B-sides and stuff that didn't make it onto the Fuzzy Logic album. And there's quite a few still floating around. I see it in record shops quite a bit. So if you haven't got it, it's still available.
I can't recommend the rest of their back catalogue enough, Billy. Get into the brilliant songwriting.
Yeah.
Always really catchy.
I think I've got the first 3.
Always interesting.
Yeah. I've got the first 3 albums, but I think I need to spin them just a lot more, just to, spend a bit more time on them.
Yeah, I echo what Kev just said then. He's such a brilliant songwriter. Again, obviously in the last episode we were talking about albums out this year. Griff Rhys had an album out this year, which none of us
Yes.
talked about. That was brilliant as well. But it was funny you should mention that Noel Gallagher gig. It was at the Arena. And I went to that gig. We came down from Newcastle that afternoon, and went to that gig. And one of our friends that came, so we all went, obviously we were drinking on the bus down or the train. I can't remember which we did. And one of our friends is a massive Super Furry Animals fan, and he got on our mate's shoulders for the Man Don't Give a song. He was off his head, and then he proceeded to whitey all the way through Noel Gallagher and didn't see any of Noel Gallagher's set. Which is
Probably
brilliant.
saw the best set of a night though. So.
Yeah, he probably did, to be fair. But again, like live though, they always used to be like they come out in like boiler suits and stuff. They were mad Super Furry Animals.
Yeah.
One of them cult bands.
They used to drive around in a converted tank. You know,
exactly.
They're not your average band.
Yeah, I remember seeing them at a festival at Kendal Calling. The first time I ever went to Kendal Calling, and there was a band. Do you remember a band called Codaline?
That's where I thought.
They were supposed to be playing, and then Super Animals, they dropped out, and Super Animals came and played instead. And was like, "This is brilliant." You know?
Was you there when it got announced?
Yeah, we were there.
I was at the main stage, and it said they pulled out and went, and then the Super Furry Animals bit came out, and everyone just started buzzing.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, obviously, where Kendal is in Wales, it's not very far away, is it, I suppose. Maybe that's what it was.
Great festival. Festival.
Yeah, cool. All right, so my number 4 is, again, it's another indie band, mid-2000s, White Lies, Ritual. Again, another album which has been on my want list for ages. The first one was on my want list, got a reissue of that. Managed to find the original of Big TV, which was crazy because I got it for a tenner as well, which was mental a few years back now. But yeah, Ritual, their follow-up album to the first one, and it was a record I've been after for ages. I loved White Lies. Maybe coming off the back of like bands like Editors, that's why I really liked them. Always been like a Joy Division fan, and all that kind of miserable, dark kind of music. But yeah, that was one I've been after for ages. So I was really happy when that got reissued. So that was a good one to pick up this year. Cool, Billy. We'll come back to you on number 3. Then we'll go back in reverse order.
So I've gone indie. Surprise, surprise. I've gone for the debut album by Shed 7, Change Giver, which has been on my want list for a very long time. Was never going to pay the ridiculous prices for an original. A band, again, that I'm really fond of. Me and my best mate Sparky used to go and watch them every Christmas on their anniversary tours in the 2000s. Great live set, great anthems. I probably think this is my favourite Shed 7 album as well. I think they've released 4 albums this year, haven't they? Or 3 albums or something?
Well, they've done 3. Well, technically they've done 4 because they've reissued that. They've done Changed Giver, haven't they, as well? Which is a remixed one. They've had their album out in January, their new album, and then they did Liquid Gold as well, their album in September. They've like the band of the year, aren't they? Shed 7 really this year because they're everywhere and they're still touring at the moment. And apparently the tour's been amazing this December.
Yeah,
so November,
I think they had 2 number 1 albums this year, and there are only 17 other artists that have done it.
Yeah,
and the other 17 are like Elvis Presley,
the
Beatles,
Led Zeppelin,
and then right at the bottom it's Shed 7, and their name has no place on that list. And I don't mean that with any disrespect, because the other 16 are like the best of the best. But I just think it's great that a little band from York 30 years later are still setting out academies, and actually their new album was okay.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't change the world or anything, but there's enough songs on it. The song with Pete Doherty's brilliant, the last song. But yeah, Change Giver, which has Long Time Dead and Speakeasy, which are probably my 2 favourite Shed songs. So yeah, man.
Yeah, great shout. All right, Ben.
Yeah, just to bounce off back of that, really, I think I Shed 7 as well. Change Giver, so I think echo everything Billy said, and I think it's just like I did have the original on vinyl, but I regrettably sold it a few years back for a pittance as well, which is frustrating. And I sold all the 7 inches. I don't know if you took some of them in when you made in my box, but yeah. But yeah, I think we're just a band who are getting stronger and stronger. Bringing out new music, which is good, and not just churning out all the classics. And I think it's just yeah, it's great to see such a hard-working band get rewarded, and hopefully,
Yeah.
like these reissues have brought out and new releases this year have done good for them by the sounds of it. And yeah, echo everything Billy said. Really, class band and class bunch of lads as well. To be fair,
Yeah, I had a chat with them at Wax and Beans this year. I didn't go to their install, but I was there to meet a mate of mine from the States, and they were sort of setting up. And they're just good guys. They're just, they're just really, really nice lads.
You used to bump into them years ago, especially the drummer in Brighton Beach at the Cockpit in Leeds.
Oh, really?
Used to be there regularly on a Friday night, over from York, having a beer and a dance to music or whatever.
He had a
really
solo
friendly.
album out this year.
Really?
Didn't know he's not in the band anymore.
He's left. He's left, but he did and he plays good. It's okay. I can't remember what it's called, but it was. I gave a bit of a listen. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Shed 7, great shout. Kev, what's your number 3?
Good question. That is Gloria Scott. What am I going to do?
Amazing record.
This is one that I've had on my want list for a good few years now. On the back of the title track, I've never really heard anything else much by her. Love the title track. That album, original pressing, that's the one. It's a brilliant cover as well. That portrait picture of her. It's a great, striking cover. It's just been waiting and waiting for a reissue, and every record store day that comes by, you think, is it going to be in there?
Yeah.
No, let's have another copy of Fleetwood Mac Rumours because everybody wants another copy of that.
Don't get me started on that record.
And finally it came out, and not even part of Record Store Day. It was through Record Store Day, but it was a Black Friday. Thing which nearly passed me by. I wasn't even looking at the list because I just see it as this big commercial rip-off Black Friday. And it was only when Neil from Vinyl Whistle sort of said, "Oh, are you interested in anything?" And I was like, "Oh, go on, I'll have a look." And picked up 2 or 3 items, and glad to see that was one of them. It's a disco light / soul album, I'd say. It's not overproduced, which some of them kind of crossover records from that period can come across really overproduced. It's said it earlier on another record. It's just got a real warmth to it, and just some strong songs and really well delivered. So a great sort of soul album, really.
Amazing record. When I did the first book, that record got mentioned to me loads by people, and I've been waiting for a reissue of that. And when the Record Store Day Black Friday lists came out, I knew I was going to be in the States for Black Friday. So I looked at the States list first to see what was coming out, and I was like, there's nothing really on there that I really wanted. I was going to spend money on. And then I couldn't believe it when I looked on the UK list and that was on here, and I wasn't even going to be in the fucking country. I was just like, what? But then I asked my local to try and get it, and they couldn't get a copy of it. But luckily, I managed to find a copy on Rough Trade website, and I think I got the last one on the Rough Trade website, so it came the other day. I've not actually spun it yet. It's on the floor there to spin, but yeah, absolutely brilliant record. Really, really good one. Cool. My number 3 is probably the weirdest album we're going to talk about all night, really. It's an album by a band called Gandalf, and it's Gandalf. A really weird, proggy psych album. Again, when I've been doing the books, that album name's been coming up a few times. I've listened to it on streaming, and I never could get a copy of an original because it literally is thousands of pounds an original copy. And that only got reissued for Record Store Day this year, but again, that was just in the States this time. So I picked it up on my trip this last few weeks just gone. And it was reasonable. It was like $20 or something like that, which is about 17 quid. So I couldn't believe it when it was that cheap. So I've been after for that for ages. Very weird album. Just very heavy psych. Lots of wailing guitar kind of stuff. But yeah, one I've been after for ages. So I was glad I could pick that one up. So, okay. Ben, we'll come back to you. Number 2.
Number 2 are one of, again, theme with me and you this, I think, Naughty's Indie. So We Are Scientists, Brain Thrust Mastery. It's the only album of theirs I don't have, and they're one of my favourite bands of that era, to be fair. Still going now, still class live, probably my favourite live band, to be fair, over the last few years. Good banter and stuff, and it's almost like seeing a comedy show and a great gig at the same time. So yeah, I think keep this one short and sweet. It's a great album. I think it's like a deluxe edition, and on the second vinyl, it's got some live tracks from Union Chapel. I think someone
Right.
mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, a gig in London we did at Union Chapel. So I think there's 4 or 5 tracks on that which are live, which is good, all from this album as well. But yeah, just filling a gap in the collection for We Are Scientists, to be fair, and welcome reissue. But yeah, completes my discography of them now, which is always cool.
I didn't even realize that had come out, it reissue this year until you put that on the list. So, again, I'm going to pick that up when I get a chance. Yeah, again, we just said indies, that noughties indies bands. I remember that them coming out with the first album, which was amazing. Picked up all the singles off that, and then this second album, which was this one, wasn't it? Brain Thrust Master, is that right? It was superb. So, yeah, really good shout for that one. Yeah, I definitely will be picking that one up. Billy, number 2.
Number 2, again, I've gone for another indie classic, Pulp, The Intros, which was a Record Store Day release. Again, like Ben's just said, I've managed to get hold of all the all the Pulp albums this year that I didn't have, and this was a nice fit. It's basically, essentially, I think it's the 3 singles they released before His and Hers came out.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of singles and a few B-sides. I actually happen to think this has got some of their best work on it. Razzmatazz, Babies, Inside Susan. They're just terrific songs. Just before they sort of took over the world in 95, 96. Yeah, it's a brilliant record, a brilliant EP. Some great songs. If you haven't, most people seem to have His and Hers up onwards in their collections, but I strongly recommend going backwards and getting the first 3 albums before this one, because they're just as good. Very different, but really interesting albums.
A bit like you, Billy, with when you said you bought an album earlier for just one song. I bought this for Razzmatazz because I'm desperate to get it on 7-inch single, but it's not the cheapest to pick up. It's my favorite Pulp song of all time. I always loved it. Always used to ask for it at indie nights I go to as a teenager and early 20s, and get told by the DJ that it wasn't popular enough and they needed to play Common People and stuff like that. But I picked up as well. It's a weird compilation of stuff.
It is,
really, really out there tracks, but they're all really good.
Yeah, really Sheffield good. Sex City as well is an absolute. But and if you believe the rumours, there'll be a new album next year, which is exciting.
Well, they are touring, aren't they? They are playing, so.
And they're playing. They played a different new song every night in the States.
Oh, have they?
So there's at least 9 new Pulp songs, or they're either new or they're unreleased. So that's something to keep an eye on.
It means they're still new, then, surely, because we've never heard them. So
yeah.
Shoved nine unreleased songs in an album. We caught a new album. So
true. Yeah.
Have you seen the stage for doing it? Tramlines, by the way, the curated stage. I thought it was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I can't believe they've managed to get him to play Tramlines. Obviously, it's the home festival. So cool. Kev, what's your number 2?
Well, we're keeping on an indies 90s theme here. Shaq, HMS Fable.
Yeah.
I can't believe this was never issued on vinyl at the time.
Ridiculous.
But Shaq, there's a whole horror story of bad luck and such like with them as a band, with the debut Water Pistol getting delayed by about 5 or 6 years getting released because of label issues and stuff like that. And then this follow-up, it's just a brilliant album from start to finish. The songwriting's unbelievable on it.
Yeah.
It's really catchy. I mean, singles like Comedy and Natalie's Party.
Yeah.
How they didn't get into the top 40 as singles, I've no idea. How they weren't massive as a band, I've no idea. I mean, this is a big shout, but I think this is possibly my favourite album to come out of Liverpool. Full stop.
That is a big shout. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. Mick Head is, I've said this probably 1,000 times this year. He's the most underrated British songwriter of the last few decades. Mick Head. He's such a great songwriter. His stuff that he's put out recently has been brilliant, but Shaq's stuff was just incredible. And again, doing the books and stuff, this was an album that people mentioned to me all the time. Obviously, I knew the record, but they were like desperate for that to be reissued, desperate for that. And I remember when it got announced to be reissued this year for National Album Day, was it? I was recording a podcast episode with Grant from Vinyl Shakedown Records, which is like episode number 2 or 3, I think I put out this year, and we were talking about it for ages off camera, like talking about that album. It's such a great record. That's my number 1 of the reissues. Spoiler alert. But yes, yeah, I can't talk it up any more than what Kev's just talked it up there. They're such a great band. And he still plays some of that stuff live as well when he tours with them.
No, I didn't know that. Not
yeah.
solo stuff live, to be honest.
So. He doesn't do Natalie's Party, which a lot of people ask for, but he does comedy. He does what's the other big one off that album? I've got it here. What am I thinking about?
To be fair, any track could be a big one. It's just such a good song, right?
Streets of Kenny, he does that as well. Yeah, just such a great album. Really, really good. Really good album. Cool, great shout. Well, I'll do my number 2 because obviously we've just talked about my number 1. So my number 2 is definitely maybe Oasis, but it's the 4 LP set version for the extra material on it. As Billy was talking about the extra material on the Charlatans album, I've got the 4 LP box set here. So it's got obviously side 1 and side 2 is side 1 and side 2, side 3 and side 4 is the album. But then they've got the Mono Valley versions, which is the unreleased record that they put out, the version of it. And then there's the outtakes from Sawmills as well, which was the other studio they did some stuff in. It's even the Mono Valley versions, like, was just so great. And Noel historically absolutely hated it and never wanted it to be put out. And yeah, such a really good record. So obviously I don't need to talk about Oasis any more than we all
They
know
were
about.
mislabeled, weren't they?
Say again, sorry?
Apparently, I watched a documentary that all that stuff was mislabeled in the storeroom.
Right, was it? I didn't know that.
That's what took them so long to get them out. Yeah, someone was cleaning the shelf or something and found the box and they were in there mislabeled.
Right.
And I was like, oh, some dude's been looking for them for about 30 years. Put the wrong label on the box, apparently. He did an interview in Shifters in Manchester with that.
Yeah.
It was that Manchester journalist with the Mohican.
John Robb.
That's him, with him talking about it, which is worth to watch if anyone hasn't.
Cool, right, we'll fly through our number 1s then. So, Billy, we'll go to you. What's your number 1 reissue of the year?
So it is the Beatles' 1964 US albums in mono, which is the first 6 American releases of the Beatles albums, which is essentially a mishmash of the first 3 UK albums and Hard Day's Night soundtrack rolled into one. It was just interesting because I've been watching the Beatles anthology recently. It's just interesting how when English bands in the 60s released stuff in the UK, because of marketing reasons and license issues, they had to change a lot of the album tracks.
Yeah.
Because the first 4 Beatles albums, there's a lot of cover versions on them. But obviously when they got to the States, they couldn't use a lot of them. So they had to take them off. It's just quite interesting, the different track listings. And I think there's some of them are different recordings. But it's a really nice box set, 6 LPs. I think it's 6 anyway. One of them you can only get in the box set, and I think I've not listened to it yet, but I think it's like interviews. For any diehard Beatles fan, it's a must.
Okay, cool. Kev, we'll come to you next.
I could talk for 40 minutes on this album alone, but All Saints, self-titled album. A bit like the Shack one, came out on the recent album day.
Yeah.
Releases, National Album Day stuff. Every year I've been asked by record shop when it comes to the main record store day, what's the one album you want? It's like All Saints. Why have they never reissued this on vinyl at any time? It's again a controversial call maybe, but is it the best pop album of all time? It could be.
It's up there.
I mean, every single track is a banger. They released a lot of singles off of it. It could have had nearly every track released as a single. But it's not totally obvious. I mean, like Never Ever, a number 1 single and everybody knows it now, but it's 6.5 minutes long on the album, and pop songs aren't 6.5 minutes long. There's just really good tracks on there. Everyone is a banger. It's so happy this has been issued at last on vinyl. As you can probably tell by the excitement in my voice. So
I
I'll
bought
leave
it
you
on
that.
the strength of your love for this album, I must admit.
And how's that going for you, Billy?
I enjoy it. It's great. It reminds me of sitting in the car with my sister going to see the Gran. Me and my sister had two Walkmans, and we'd sit in the back, and she'd have that, and I'd have something else, and we'd swap halfway through the journey.
Your sister got the taste in the family then, music.
Oh, can't you tell by my last two lists?
Okay, cool. Ben, we'll come to you then quickly.
Yeah, so mine, absolutely buzzing that this got released, to be fair. The Organ, Grab That Gun and Thieves. So yeah, an album which eluded me since 2006 for a band from Canada, post-punk. The best way I'd describe it is almost, it's like The Cure being fronted by a female Morrissey. I think they're just an incredible band, to be fair. They're just, yeah, every time I listen to them, it just gets me excited. And yeah, I think the original press of it goes for about 250 quid. And I passed it by on a couple of occasions, regrettably. But yeah, this one comes on it's limited to 500 copies, pressed in Canada only. On like a nice smoky vinyl. So yeah, outstanding album, and urge anyone to check it out. But again, another one from mid-2000s. Yeah.
I didn't know this had come out until I saw your list the other day. I'm going to have to try and get hold of a copy because I love this band. I saw them live back in the day, and
yes, incredible
band. 7-inch or 2 by them. But yeah, I love stuff on vinyl on their albums. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, mine's obviously HMS Fable by Shaq, and we've talked about that one. So that brings us to the end of that our list there, and the end of this episode. So that was the roundtable discussion talking about our favourite reissues of 2024. Hopefully next year we'll get as many good reissues, if not more. I know my want list of reissues or albums that I can't get is just ridiculously huge. I'm sure your guys are as well. So, so join us next week for the next episode where we talk about our favourite finds of the year. That's one I'm really looking forward to. Obviously off the back of my recent trip to the States and Canada, I found some massive stuff. So, again, thank you to Kevin and to Ben and to Billy for joining us, and we'll catch up with you soon.